Hello, welcome to the preseason overpaid over the bar video. Less than 48 hours, no, just over 48 hours until the Premier League's 26-27 season starts. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you my latest draft, which is quite similar to the last one. If you watched the last video in terms of the strategy, only a couple of changes in terms of personnel. I'm quite keen on the strategy I'm going with, quite risky, but I'm going to do it anyway. Why not? I'm also going to be looking at a really nice Haaland and Fernandes draft, which is quite template, but is very good in terms of how to avoid damage in the first game week one. That's been sent in by Craig Anderson of the Overpaid Over the Bar League, one of the top competitors historically in that mini league. So, first of all, I want to look at the top 15 or so players, or maybe more in terms of popularity. So, obviously, Erling Haaland is the most popular player currently in FPL, but there are many others in there that a lot of people will be considering because other players have them as much as their own potential. And I just want to look at them each in terms of, is there a way that we could go without having one or two of them, that other people have? So let's look at them all in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. So first of all, let's look at Erling Haaland. And since last Sunday, the Community Shield Manchester City Arsenal game, there's certainly been a small drop in ownership. He was around 77, I think, or 75 at least, and he's dropped down to 70, 68, 69.8%. So obviously, some people are seeing his performance as indicative of a less reliable output. Now, let's view that with a little bit of doubts because, first of all, he's played, I don't know, four, five charity shields, community shields for Manchester City since joining. Hasn't scored in any of them. If anyone remembers his first one, I remember his first one when he first joined, and people decided not to own him in game week one because he had a very sort of quiet game. And then in game week one, he scored two goals, or at least got on a goal and assist. And he's done it in almost every single first game of the season since he joined Manchester City. So I think basing your opinion on the Community Shield doesn't make sense. I mean, I've decided to go against Haaland, but honestly, I think the likelihood is he'll score next weekend against Bournemouth, get points in that game. So if you were thinking about dropping him based on that performance, or even the Manchester City team performance, I think they'd be making a big mistake because they typically do not compete in that Community Shield. Even, I mean, also under Pep Guardiola, they very rarely put in a real push to win that game. And it's understandable why, given the lack of prestige associated with the Shield. So I wouldn't write Manchester City off at this point at all. I think they can be as good as Arsenal this season. I don't think Arsenal have got this wrapped up by any means. However, Arsenal Arsenal's defending was absolutely superb. As Manchester City's attack was a little bit weak, and Manchester City's defending was appalling at times, especially on the goals, losing players inside the final third. Like they didn't care; they were making runs. That was that bad. And I don't think Arsenal are going to play almost any Premier League team in the next 5 weeks that defends as slackly as Manchester City did last Sunday. So I think judging anything on that game is a little bit strange. However, Erling Haaland over 4 seasons in the Premier League has been extremely consistent. Uh, Minimum 22 goals. Last season he put in a lot of minutes, nearly 3,000 minutes, and got 27 goals and 8 assists. Generally speaking, at some point in the season, he's going to go on scoring runs. And typically he does it at the beginning of the season. So obviously there's a very good reason to own him. The reason to not own him is because of his price and because of who you can get if you don't have him. And it basically boils down to that, really. There is a small chance that the summer took more out of him this summer than any other. And I'm hoping that that was the case. I don't own Erling Haaland. So I'm hoping that the fact that he played a proper competitive World Cup. Because remember, the only summer football he's had since joining Manchester City previous to that was the Club World Cup in the previous summer, except that they didn't really put in a lot of energy into that tournament. They didn't do much training between games. So I don't see that as indicative of as a precedent. So I think there's a small possibility that he won't have as much energy as normal start of the season. However, my bet is that he probably will. So that's Haaland. Second most owned, obviously, is our friend Bruno Fernandes, who, I mean, he isn't as consistent over the years as Haaland. We can see the points figures here can dip to 166, 151, and this was only his second ever 200 point season last season. And this is the biggest argument against Bruno, that at 12 million, he's not reliable to finish on 200 points. But that's over the whole season. And the reason to get him is because of his fixtures. Holloway, Ipswich at home, Everton away is the first three. Very, very likely to score points in those. And of course, he's on penalties, he's on most corners, he's on free kicks, and he's playing higher up the field than last season. At the beginning of last season, he wasn't playing very high up the field. So with the central midfield players that they're signing, it may give him a lot more license to get in the box and get goals. Because last season he only scored 9 and he assisted 24. Now, just be a bit wary of that because expected assists were 12 and real assists were 24. So he super overachieved on assists. It probably means he was giving the ball to players in positions where they weren't likely to score, but they scored anyway. So that is not likely to carry on. So he does need to add goals to his output if he's going to get near 200 points this season. But the reason I have him and the reason I have him as captain is because of his fixtures. Holloway, Ipswich at home, Evans away. They play Manchester City at home in game week 4, but I may very well not have him by that time, and I'll talk about that in a little while. Okay, the third most player, a third most owned player overall. So I think it's Joao Pedro. Actually, he's higher owned than Bruno Fernandes. He's the second highest owned player, Joao Pedro. The biggest reason to have Joao Pedro in your team, well, the first reason he's got 15 goals and 9 assists last season, which is extremely good, total of 177 points, but he's 7.5. And I don't see any argument for not having him. I've seen a couple of drafts without him, but I don't understand why they don't have him. I can't understand that at all. I don't think there's much to discuss here. He's certainly going to play 90 minutes most games. He's certainly Chelsea's number one choice up front. Nothing to talk about there, in my opinion. So behind that, Soboslai is on 41%. So he must be the next one. Now, this is where we start getting into the you might avoid territory. Now, I today or yesterday I've decided to get in Soboslai um, because up to now I was resisting him on the basis that I don't necessarily think he's going to get that many goals or assists. Last season he had 6 goals, 7 assists, but he had plenty of DEFCONs, which pushed his total up to 160. It could well be he doesn't reach that total this season because he got most of his DEFCONs when he played right back, filling in for other players last season, and it's unlikely he'll need to play that position this season. So that is an argument against Soboslai, except that he's playing 90 minutes and he will play 90 minutes almost every game. And I think Liverpool might be a lot better this season under Iraola. People are saying Iraola might take time for his ideas to catch on because when he started at Bournemouth, when he managed there, it took them about 10 or 11 games to even win a game, I think. So it could happen at Liverpool. It's just that I kind of feel that the players will put in a lot of effort that they weren't putting in for whatever reason under Slot. People blame Slot for that, but I think the players could take some blame as well. But you could see the levels of energy rising among the players. So I'm thinking I need a Liverpool midfield player, either Soboslai or Wirtz and or Isak. I've also considered. I've had all three of them in the team and taken them out. But I think I need one of those. And at the minute, I've got Soboslai. But I do think there's an argument against him. I think you could safely kind of say, oh, I don't think he's going to get the goals and assists and almost definitely not the DEFCONs that he got last season. So that's one to consider. Next, and Burmo's on 32. I think he must be the next highest owned. Now, if you have if you have Fernandes, then you might want Burmo as well. If you don't have Fernandes, you might definitely want Burmo with Manchester United's fixtures, which I've already talked about. I think I'm going to go without him, and I'll say why. Okay. 11 goals and 3 assists last season. He did 2,600 minutes. That's a good amount of minutes for not a huge total. Um, since he came off penalties, at Brentford he was on penalties, and at Brentford he played 90 minutes every game. And I think people remember that Brian Mbeumo more than they're thinking about the Brian Mbeumo from last season Manchester United. If you look at these totals for Brentford, they're higher, especially these 200 this season here, this season here, and the minutes are much higher. I think he was injured in this season, 23-24, because his minutes are down on that one. Um, so I think Mbeumo was a little bit overestimated. However, he has great fixtures, and he may play number nine because people aren't sure if Sheshko is ready. I was nearly said mixed up there and said sure if Sheshko is ready. But Hull away, Ipswich at home, and Everton away. I mean, I think he's a good choice, but I don't like the choice as much going forward, and I'm still not sure how quickly I'm going to wild card. So I'm just on Fernandes there, but I think he's another one that you can avoid. Um, Gabriel and Calafiori both on 29, 30%. Calafiori, I think his ownership has rocketed since he scored that goal in the Community Shield. I'm definitely having Calafiori. I think he's a great pick. I don't see Hincapie taking minutes off him much at that left back spot for Arsenal. Very attacking player. Obviously, he's going to have a part to play going forward for Arsenal this season. The only downside is that possible, he might, when the Champions League comes around, might be replaced by Hincapie at left back every game, every other game or so. That is quite possible. But certainly early doors, I don't think there's an argument against having him. Um, Gabriel is quite expensive at 8 million, and it's difficult to get him in your team and have other decent defenders. So I've not picked him. He's certainly scary not to own, and I think it's highly likely he has another great season. Although 5 assists last season and 3 goals, surely he can't do the same this season. And there is talk of the Premier League referees clamping down on the kind of rugby scrum corners that we saw last season that definitely benefited certain players and certain clubs, and Arsenal and Gabriel being among those. So that could harm his attacking output a little bit. I don't see Arsenal's defense being much worse than it was last season. I think you need at least one Arsenal defender, Gabriel, if you can afford him. Um, Also on 30, sorry, on 26 is Semenyo. Now, today it was announced that, or it's been reported, I should say, that Doku will be out for several weeks for Manchester City. Now, I always think Semenyo looks better on the left than he does on the right, and this will give him a chance to play there. I'm fully in on Semenyo. 8.5, I think, is a really good price for him. And people thought about him not being different at Manchester City. I didn't notice that. I thought he had plenty of goals and assists for Manchester City. Maybe I was missing something. Stats could prove me wrong. But I thought he had a fine end to the season with Manchester City, although they had a few games towards the end where they weren't firing at all. And obviously last Sunday was the same. But I'm definitely having Antoine Semenyo. You look at these three games: Bournemouth home, Palace away, Coventry at home. If you haven't got Haaland, which I don't, I think you'd need Semenyo. You'd be fool not to have him. If you have Haaland, you may think, well, I can get other players at a better price in midfield. I don't want to be splashing out, wasting all my money or spending all my money on Manchester City assets because it's not going to leave much room for anything else. But for me, Semenyo is an absolute must, and I don't see his form dropping. He seems to be a fitness freak, from what I can tell. He did play some World Cup games, but not too late in the competition. Definitely going there. Now, the other one is Morgan Rogers, who has been looking impressive for Chelsea in pre-season, already scored a goal, having played with England until the last week of the World Cup. Of course, he's another player who seems not to have fitness problems at all, and they've got good fixtures except for Arsenal away. Their first five very winnable except for Arsenal away, where you might bench him or just suffer that game week. I think he's a very good pick. I haven't got him. I don't like anymore picking players that are new to clubs or new to the Premier League on the first week. I've had my fingers burnt too many times. I think I did it with Isak at Liverpool last season. I think, or did I actually? I'm not sure. But it just doesn't always seem to be a smooth thing to do. Just to buy a player, especially on the first day of the season. I think it's easier for players to move in January sometimes because then they're already in the swing. But in the summer, it's quite hard for players to fit into a whole new season for clubs. And although he may very well do, I mean, playing Fulham away and Brighton at home for Chelsea shouldn't be too difficult. I'm sure he'll do fine. But that's my reasoning. That's why I'm not on Morgan Rogers. However, at 7.5, it's another player that I think has been priced wrong. I actually think Rogers, Semenyo, and Joao Pedro have all been priced wrong, in my opinion. But anyway, that's fine. So, uh, yeah, then we get to Calvert-Lewin's on 28%. I mean, basically, there aren't any 6 million forwards or around that price that are scored as many goals last season as Calvert-Lewin did. And I think, if he hadn't been so patchy in his previous 5 seasons, although his minutes weren't a lot in the previous 5 seasons, and he had injury problems, but it was only last season where he returned as many as 14 goals, and his XG was 15.57, so he even missed a few. And actually, if you look over the seasons, he underperforms on his XG almost every season. Well, all the seasons we have XG data for, he's underperformed by around half in every single case, except last season where he did underperform, but only by one goal. So that's something about him, is that some people think he doesn't have the clinical ability that a striker should have, which is the argument against Calvert-Lewin. I think there are huge arguments for Calvert-Lewin, not least the fact that Leeds United have strengthened their squad in the positions they needed to, and they have the same manager as last season, which many clubs don't. So they have that rhythm still going. They've looked good in pre-season. They have players on the bench that are decent. I mean, Calvert-Lewin may not play 90 minutes in all the games, but he probably will play nearly, I would think. And of course, he's on penalties. So I think he's a really, really good pick. I agree with the 28% of owners. Remember, that's only around a quarter. So if you have him, he's still a good own if you think he's going to net a couple of goals, which I do. He's more popular than Thiago. He's more popular than Isak at 15 million. Um, and apart from that, really, we have Pedro Porro, good pick for Spurs. And Luke Shaw, I've got him 4.5 million for Manchester United in their first two fixtures. And of course, O'Reilly. Now, Nico O'Reilly it could be a really good player to have. I don't have him because of his price, but honestly, he's an attacking player and he's 6.5. Imagine paying 6.5 for a really good midfield player, which is kind of what you're doing with O'Reilly, except his goals are worth more because he's a defender. So uh, I kind of feel O'Reilly from game week 3 for me may be a no-brainer if I play the wild card in game week 3, which I may very well do. I don't have him at the minute, but I think this is Nico O'Reilly's a fantastic pick. The only thing is he obviously played until the last week of the World Cup, so he's not going to be at his sharpest right now. But like I say, I think, I mean, 6.5 isn't too expensive for a player that had as much attacking output as he did last season. Um, just want to draw your attention to Virgil van Dijk. 6 goals and 1 assist last season in a season where Liverpool didn't play very well. So his overall total of 175, could be looked at in the light of the fact that Liverpool underperformed. He actually scored his biggest total for 5 seasons in FPL. So he becomes more and more important for the club. I mean, you could say that he dug them out in games where they needed last minute goals, and he was often up there trying to get the header in situations which happen when your team isn't playing very well, and that could be an argument against him. But I think he's a great pick, even at 6.5 as a defender. And I have him in ahead of O'Reilly. I think his defcons and clean sheets could be good for Liverpool this season. Liverpool are very much an unknown, but I'm guessing they do well under Iraola. I do think Iraola will be able to make that step up from being a mid-table manager to a top Premier League manager, but who knows? We will see. This is how my squad is looking now. Remember, this is a bench boost squad. So what I've done is I've picked every single player on the basis that they will definitely start. And as far as I can tell, all of these 15 players will definitely start. I haven't got any Coventry players. I haven't got anything from weak teams in here. I've only got decent teams and decent players in here. Now, it does mean that come game week 2, I could be in a real bench headache and it won't be easy for me to make transfers. But the plan is to game week 3 move off Bruno Fernandes and move on to Erling Haaland. Now, how can I do that? Well, I've got 1.5 million in the bank. I've picked Gyökeres, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. It's possible now, if price rises and falls, do not mess this up. It's possible for me to sell Bruno Fernandes by a 5.5 midfield player like Pascal Gross and then move directly from Gyökeres to Haaland at 15.5 million. Now, it's quite possible that because this is one reason why I didn't pick Isaac, by the way, because his price might drop if he doesn't do well. Gyökeres' price might not drop because he's so lowly owned that if he doesn't score goals against Coventry, I don't think any too many people will be selling him, because not too many people own him in the first place. Now, I think he's going to start against Coventry, and I'm looking to get some kind of clue on Friday evening before the deadline that he will start. Even if he doesn't start, he could easily come on and score in this game, and he certainly will come on. And I think he'll come on after 65 or 70 minutes if he's on the bench. So I'm. This is my crazy pick. The rest of these players are good picks. No, nobody's. If you go to any content creator worth their salt, they're not going to say any of these are bad picks. The rest of the squad, Gyökeres, they're going to say is a bad pick, and I completely agree. But I am basing this on the hope that he starts the commentary game and won't have to play for me again. It's almost as simple as that. He'll be benched the following week against Aston Villa because there's too many risks he won't start. And after that, I'll be probably wildcarding in game week 3 if I don't sell him directly for Haaland, as I described. So this is the thing. I wanted to do something a bit different, and this is what I'm doing. And I really I really think the risk is not too high. It is a risk. The risk is not having Haaland. It's not having Gyökeres. The risk is not having Haaland. And I could have had Isak instead. It would still be a risk not having Haaland. But I've decided on Gyökeres. Now, Shada, fantastic preseason for Bournemouth. I just brought him in now. Soboslai, I've already talked about. Um, the one that I think that you should pay attention to is this guy, Benjamin White. Remember him, right? Ownership, 3.5%. Everyone's paying attention to Calafiori because he scored. But did you see how many times Ben White got to the byline for Arsenal in that game? Sometimes he didn't get the ball from Madueke when he got to the byline. Sometimes he did, but he was overlapping all the time, and he's a very intelligent player when it comes to putting the ball across. And we saw a couple of times where he could have had an assist. So I'm really liking this pick, and I'm betting on an Arsenal clean sheet at home to Coventry for my 12 points at the back for these two, whether they get def cons or assists or not or whatever. So I'm hoping those pay off. Hopefully Maguire and Shaw can keep a clean sheet against Hull, and Semenyo get some points attacking against Bournemouth. So this is my team. It might change tomorrow. If I get wind that Gyökeres definitely isn't starting, I might take him out. And any other interesting news that comes out might. But I think this is what I'm going to start with tomorrow. So it doesn't really matter what my first 11 is, but at the minute it's like this with Shada, Soboslai, and Maguire on the bench with Kingsley at Brentford on the bench. I mean, I suppose you could argue that Soboslai is a better pick than Calvert. Is he? Not really. Yeah, no, this would be my first 11. But anyway, it's a bench boost. So I want you to also now have a look at a different team that was sent in by Craig, which is a bench, sorry, not a bench boost team, a game week one team with Bruno Fernandes and Erling Haaland. Now, this is responding to Solis's performance in the Community Shield on the left wing for Arsenal. Looked very, very good indeed. So he's got him in midfield with Pascal Gross, possibly on penalties, not definitely on penalties, because Brighton have signed a new striker with an exotic name, but Promise. That's right. It's called Promise something. Fantastic name. Uh, and he might get penalties for Brighton, but we pretty much can assume it's Gross at this point. I think Van Heck is a fantastic pick. Rodon is a fantastic pick. White and Rea, fantastic picks for Arsenal. He's got Ben White in there, not Calafiori. And up front, he has the template forward line of Haaland captain, Joao Pedro, Calvert-Lewin. I agree with having Haaland captain if you have both Bruno Fernandes and Erling Haaland. Erling Haaland loves scoring at the Etihad. They're at home, and Bournemouth, we don't really know how they're going to be with a new manager. I would, if I had both these players, I'd definitely captain Haaland, absolutely certainly. So this is a good one. Now on the bench, Van Uwijk can next week uh, be a possible bench boost option because Coventry have Hull at home next week. So there may be a bench boost in mind with this. And he's got Hume, decent pick for Sunderland. Uh, Although his reserve keeper is not a playing goalkeeper, so it does seem this is not a bench boost game week two team because his reserve keeper is it Jason Steele, somebody Steele for Brighton, and he doesn't play. So obviously this isn't a bench boost team, but he does have money in the bank to upgrade players as it stands. I think he's got 1 million in the bank with this team. So I mean, looking at this team, if you're a sensible person, this is what you would do. I've decided to not do this, uh, just for a, I mean, I'm just wondering how much it will really hurt me if it hurts me. Um, let's experiment and see. But this is a very good, typical team. If you wanted to start the season, I mean, protecting yourself. from too much hurt from other players because there isn't really another player here that he doesn't have that's going to hurt him very, very badly. Because he's got all the players that most people have got going forward. And Burma could very much hurt me in game week one with a couple of goals at Hull. I've got Gibbs White instead, and he's not Nottingham Forest are not Manchester United when it comes to scoring goals. So yeah. Anyway, so that that is kind of it for today. I just want to say a couple of things to avoid when you're playing this game is whatever if you pick a player for game week one and they start, okay, and they play mostly 90 minutes, but they don't return and they don't have a very good game, don't transfer them out. You've picked them, you've picked them, stick with them, okay? Because transfers, some of our transfers are our biggest enemies in FPL. And one game is just not enough. It's not enough to ditch one player and go for another. So, okay, if you see one player doing really well and you think, yeah, he's going to continue this, fine. But remember what happened last season when Manchester City went to Wolves and your man at Manchester City, Reinders, don't know how you pronounce that in Dutch, had a fantastic game at Wolves, but it was Wolves and Wolves went down, right? And we didn't really look at it in that context. I got him in immediately because he was 5.5, I think. I immediately got Reinders in. Um, and I noticed that the best players in the game didn't do that. They didn't do it. So I'm saying this year, just be careful what assumptions you make after game week, and be careful how much you judge your team on what happened last Sunday, and your predictions for the season. Because in my mind, there is no way that Manchester City are ruled out of a title race at this point. I think they're very close to Arsenal, and I think it's between those two. I don't think any other team. I mean, it's very unlikely that Liverpool or Chelsea would get their act together to such an extent that they might challenge them. But those are the only two other clubs that could challenge them. So for me, Manchester City do have very much a good chance of winning the title. Um, I don't expect what happened last Sunday to continue because that was just way below what they're capable of. Um, yeah, and the main thing is to enjoy the game. Now it's easy to say that when you do well because I've had three really good seasons, and I mean it's easy for me to say enjoy the game because I do enjoy the game. I really do enjoy it. But I have to, I have to come on here and face my 25 viewers every week. And, I'm going to do that whether I've scored points or I've not scored points, because there's plenty of content creators I watch that are not great players of the game, but are very good content creators. And I like that. I like watching somebody who can give you something to think about. They don't have to be somebody you copy. And what's the point of watching a video and copying somebody's team? I don't understand that. So my thing is, right, I like doing these videos. For the few people that watch them, I enjoy doing them. I'm going to continue to do them this season. Don't expect me to finish in the top 50K again, but I'll have a good go at it and I'll give you ideas as to how you can do well. Um, I'm not much on the stats. I don't use the tools and all that, but I do listen to other people in terms of how they view those stats. And so I'm mostly eye tests, and that's not the best way to play the game. However, there are times when I do make a decision that goes against what some of the biggest, um, the most popular ideas are based on what I've seen, and occasionally it works out well. Sometimes it doesn't. All right. Anyway, rambled on a bit, but I can't wait for the new Premier League season, the new fantasy football season. My team Exeter City has already started in League Two this season. I nearly said League One, but it's not League One anymore. And we had a bad start. And I'm just hoping we can survive in League Two because the financial problems of the club are well known, and I do think we will. I think we've got a great manager, and I think we've got enough players to um, make it work in League Two. So that's where that's why emotions do get caught up in whether Exeter City do well or not, much more than my fantasy team. Okay, so see you, I think, on Monday before the Monday night game, because I won't be able to do a video next week. So I'm traveling next week, so I won't be able to do a video from Tuesday. So probably on Monday. If not Monday, I'll probably catch you Thursday or Friday. Probably Friday, Thursday, I think. Anyway, take care. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Could you please give me a like if you watched this far? Maybe you did watch this far. Thank you. Bye bye.